People have heard me say lab ranges are inaccurate. This is an interesting thing. Unless you work in medical, we interview providers, we interview medical assistants, RNs all the time to work here. And even they don't pay attention to this because they don't know how important it is to be able to assess the data properly. Lab ranges over time change. And you would think that they're changing those lab ranges due to some scientific data or discoveries that have come about. But funny enough, that isn't why they change them. Every year, the lab has to reevaluate the people who have been to the lab, the patients. They have to look at those ranges statistically. They don't know whether those people are healthy or not. They just say statistically how are the ranges, and they have to adjust them based on the people who have come to the lab. Well, the problem is sick people go to the lab, healthy people don't. And the sicker our population becomes, the wider the range becomes. So somebody 10 years ago, it's a great example actually. This is, by the way, this is completely 100% what occurred, okay? And I just looked at this morning. 12 years ago, the lab ranges for Hashimoto's antibodies against the thyroid, right? So this is thyroglobulin antibodies or thyroid peroxidase antibodies. 12 years ago, the range for normal, healthy thyroglobulin antibodies was 0 to 6. Today, because so many more people are getting it tested and we're finding out that so many more people have this, what's happened is the range has expanded. Now a lab range is 0 to 112 at the lab we use. 12 years ago, if somebody came back and they tested 20, we would have been like, oh my God, they have Hashimoto's, which they do. Their immune system's attacking their thyroid. Now if it comes back with a 20, that's well below 112 and would never be diagnosed because the lab ranges have changed over the years. It's the same for thyroid peroxidase, which also brings me up. We had a patient come in the other day. She had thyroid peroxidase antibodies diagnosed by her doctor at 600, which is really high. It's not the highest we've ever seen, but that's really high. Absolutely Hashimoto's. But he didn't check thyroglobulin antibodies, and he said, because I don't have the antibodies for the other ones, I can't diagnose you with Hashimoto's. I'm just bringing that up because it seems ridiculous that somebody's not making a correct diagnosis. And our thought process was the doctor just doesn't know what to do about it. It's not that he couldn't diagnose it. It's just that if he does this diagnosis, the patient's going to say, well, what do we do about that? Or he's worried that they might say, what do we do about that? When the only thing he's going to do is write a prescription for levothyroxine or Synthroid. Here's how this would affect a patient, right? So the patient goes, now keep in mind, thyroglobulin antibodies used to be 0 to 6, right? Now she comes back, let's say she tests at 79, which is under the range now because of the way the statistics have changed. So she comes back and let's say her numbers are 79 for this patient. Number one, the patient doesn't get a proper diagnosis. Number two, she doesn't get proper treatment. Number three, that's an invalidation of the patient who knows they don't feel good, and maybe their TSH on their thyroid is totally fine. Maybe even their thyroid hormone levels look fine on their labs that day. But the patient is going to be told nothing's wrong with you, right? And you need to be put on an antidepressant medication. You're cuckoo, right? They might not say it that way, but you get the idea. So those are the three things that kind of come up immediately. But here's the other thing that happens. According to the best resources that we have available to us regarding autoimmune issues is that autoimmune issue goes undiagnosed. And statistically speaking, if you have one autoimmune issue, there's a 90 to 95% chance that you either already have or develop another one. And if somebody's not doing the right things to get the person's immune system calm down and relaxed, you have an autoimmune disaster just waiting to happen. So they don't get diagnosed and everything's missed. The patient doesn't get better. And not only do they not get better, but they get worse and worse and worse until finally somebody diagnoses them with, let's say, rheumatoid arthritis or Crohn's or celiac or God forbid, multiple sclerosis, because nobody was able to address the immune system early enough because the labs changed their range based on a statistical analysis without much science behind it. And doctors don't know what to do about autoimmune issues until they become something that can be treated with an immunosuppressant drug. And I would challenge you, if you watch any medical videos on social media, Instagram, TikTok, whatever, and you hear what women say about their experience at the doctor, you would know this is what happens to them. Way more than men, okay? Way more than men. Women get gaslit into believing that there's nothing wrong with them. It's just because they're a woman, they have a period, they're just cuckoo, whatever the case may be. And this is, you just watch social media. If you're not doing it already, watch social media. You'll find that there's so many women talking about this aspect of health.